What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Press for Presence. Today, we've got a solo podcast where we are going to cover a handful of different topics. It has been a minute since we were consistent on the podcast, and if you are one of the diehard listeners who have noticed that we haven't been super consistent about dropping every Monday at 6, then number one, thank you for being such a good listener and supporting the show. And number two, we're going to get into it a little bit. I'm really excited to be able to come back with a solo episode because it's been a handful of months since we've had a chance to check in, and this has just been an absolutely crazy season that I've got a lot to report back on. So this episode's going to be about that. I've got a handful of things that I've just kind of gathered in the world from experiences that have happened. I'm actually bringing in some stuff from my notes app that I keep called the Creative Act. And then lastly, we've got some audience Q&A that we're going to bring in too. So should be a fun episode. I really enjoy doing these solo episodes because it allows me the chance to kind of report back on the last couple months of stuff that I've gathered from the world. I also really like that with the Q&A portions, it allows me to wonder what you guys are thinking about and get feedback from some of the things that you guys have been thinking about, some of your experiences, different ideas that you have that you want me to expand on and things like that. And it feels like just a really cool opportunity to be able to connect with everybody that listens to the show. And I get a lot of really great feedback on it. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. We've got quite a bit of ground to cover, so we will get into it here pretty quick. Like I said before, thank you to everybody who listens to the show and who has supported the show. This is probably my favorite thing that I do in my entire life. And I really appreciate not only the support, but just the fact that people take the time out of their day and take their most valuable resource, which is their attention, and choose to apply it to something that I'm putting out. So nothing but extreme gratitude for all of the opportunities that this podcast has created, all the people that it's brought into my world, and all of the, quite frankly, awesome conversations that it's brought into my life. So thank you guys for being patient with me as I got some stuff sorted out in the business and in my life the last couple months. I am super excited to be coming back strong with this episode, and we've got probably 4 or 5 now booked over the next 2 weeks. So I'm making another big push at getting this thing back on track. It's so exciting to me to be able to bring cool people that I meet in the world onto this show and give them a platform to tell their stories and help impact people's lives. And, this podcast is very meditative. It's a great download. It's so many things in my life, and I can really tell and feel when it's missing. So selfishly, I'm very glad that it's back, and I hope you guys are too. That being said, let's get into it. We've got section 1, which is just kind of a little update on the last couple months, letting you guys know what's been up. So a handful of months ago, towards the end of the spring, early summer, I was in a bit of a doom loop, honestly. The kinds of things that were going on were patterns that have been going on for a while in my business and in some of my side pursuits. And what that looked like was like, I would get the business to a point where our team was really good. We would have plenty of work coming in. We'd have all this stuff going on, and it would allow me to step back from the business a little bit and allocate some of my time to travel, to podcasting, and to some stuff that's, for lack of a better description, like creative ventures, which is very exciting. However, the problem was the foundation that I was setting before I stepped aside to do some of that stuff was never quite enough to actually be able to exercise that freedom and fully enjoy stepping away. What I mean by that is I would go on trips with some of my friends who were also business people and tend to be a little bit older, and they could be gone for a year if they wanted to. A lot of them have built businesses for decades. They've been in it for a long time. They've had lots of success. And when we go on trips, we go to the same place. We're doing the same kind of stuff and all of that. But the difference is I could be gone for the week that we planned on being gone for. And when I came back, it was time to get right back into it. There were things that I needed to check back in on. There were things that I needed to make sure that didn't fall apart. There was like all of this like stuff that I had to get back into where they don't. They've spent decades, a lot of them, building foundations where they're business can actually run without them. They actually have the finances to be gone as long as they want. They can essentially just make it happen. And I think what I was trying to do is I was in some ways trying to grab onto that too early. I was maybe trying to delegate too much. Or I was trying to do these different things. And it put me in a spot where the business never had the opportunity to achieve the things that it needed to achieve and actually set a super solid foundation. It was like if I was gone for a month, I'd come back and shit would probably be on fire and I would probably need to bring a real big fire hose. And then since that was not neglected, but like since I was kind of like pulling the plug too early on that and going over and doing these creative pursuits, I could start to get into podcasting. I could maybe do a travel trip. I could maybe like dedicate some more time to it. But then eventually I would have to come back over to the business and neglect that for a little while. And so it felt like this weird little ping pong thing that was happening where I could go all in for the business and neglect the podcast. And then I could go all into the podcast and neglect the business. And like, it just became this really tricky thing where I felt like I wasn't really doing a great job at either one of them. And so what I decided to do at the beginning of this summer, end of last spring, is just decided to pick one. And I have a team in my business that I'm super fortunate to have a chance to work with. And they're very creative. They're inspiring to me. I care about them a ton. And that is the one thing where I have multiple people who count on me for that. And for the podcasting, it's like me counting on me. And so what I decided to do was say, okay, my end goal is to be able to have a very solid foundation of my business where my people are taken care of, my clients are taken care of, things are growing at a steady rate, and things are solid, whether I'm there or not. And to be able to use the time once that is sorted to be able to really dive into the podcast, get great guests, have great production, really do the damn thing over here. But if I never just choose one and set a foundation, it's never going to happen. And so I chose first to dive all in on the business and do my very best to set that foundation that will allow that thing to thrive and then allow me to allocate some time to this thing and help it grow to the size that I believe it can get to. And it was tough. There were quite a few things that we needed to learn in the business. We launched a brand new offer. For those of you who don't know, I have a media company called Storyline Media. We do social media management, content creation, one-off projects, all of that kind of stuff. But we are very heavy into the creative space. And our bread and butter has been organic social media management for going on 4 years in March. That being said, there are a couple changes that we needed to make in order to bring a little bit more value to our clients and do some different things like that. And so we launched an offer where we're essentially building people's entire marketing funnels using some social media ads. And what it allows us to do is draw a very clear line between how much money our clients give us and what their return on investment is, because we're able to track everything. That's something that was missing in my business a little bit, and it was impacting our growth and some of our client retention. And not to get too into the weeds on some of the business stuff, but I didn't feel like we had the ingredients to build a really solid foundation of a company that could grow without me, without launching this other offer. And so we went ahead and did it. And I was working mostly 7 days a week. Like, when I get real busy, little things that are actually the big things start to slip, where, at times I start working out less, or I'll start skipping boxing, or I'll stop doing the things that really fill my cup. And I decided it was just time to go. And so I kind of felt myself slipping into that a little bit. I had a ton of learning to do on my end to learn some of the stuff that we needed to deliver on. I was busy doing a ton of sales and client delivery and all that kind of stuff that comes with new growth in business. And, fortunately it went really well for us. But that being said, I started to notice myself going into that full-on red line, burnout mode. And for the first time, I decided to do something about it. Hey guys, just a brief pause in the show to ask one quick favor. A lot of you guys who listen, even the day ones who listen every week, have yet to rate this show on their favorite platform. And so that's the one thing that I'm going to ask you guys. It really helps us grow the show. It helps us get awesome guests on the show. And if you could give us a 5-star rating on your favorite platform that you're listening on right now, it would probably take 10 seconds, but it would mean the world to me. And it'll really help us continue to make an awesome show for you guys. So if you don't mind, that's the only ask. We're not running any ads right now. We're not asking anything of you guys. We just want to be putting out a great show. So if you could go do that, that'd be awesome. And until then, let's get back to the show. I've been somebody who is always willing to work extremely hard at things. And a lot of times it's because I believe that that hard work is going to result in me getting the thing that I want. And so in the past, I've gone through these big phases of like 3 months of just like nose to the grindstone, work is the only thing that matters, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go on like a big 1 week trip where I'll leave the country or I'll do, whatever. And it's like this really stark, totally go hard, burnout, need the trip at the end of it, go on the trip, decompress for a couple days, and then, try to come back with a fire lit up on my ass, which usually happened. But it's kind of just an exhausting way to live. And towards the end of those 3-month periods, I was always like super burnt out and I was kind of shitty to be around and probably wasn't sleeping well and probably let some of my health go or wasn't lifting as much. And I just decided I didn't really want to run that program the same way this summer. And so one of the things that I figured out was I was able to book a lot of trips over the weekends and have those as like micro doses of that big vacation at the end with the intention of allowing myself to just be a more enjoyable human and actually enjoy my life during that phase instead of just like redlining it the entire time, hoping the engine doesn't blow up and then cool off at the end. And so that kind of brings me to one of my first reflections, which is that pattern breaks are the things that we remember in our lives, not our routines. And I tend to default to being a super routine person because I value discipline quite a bit. And even my brain, I don't have the best self-talk when I do things like miss the gym or go to bed super late or, slip up and have a drink when I don't want to or whatever the thing is. And I tend to, when I get really disciplined, I tend to say no to things that might be fun just to do in life and kind of ignore, do it like it's some kind of virtue that like I have to uphold or something like that. And typically that's not true. But what booking all of these weekend trips in my summer made me realize is like, I can kind of have both at the same time. And it wasn't until I was talking on Parker Brown's podcast a couple of weeks ago that I kind of had this moment where I realized that the pattern breaks in our lives are the things that we report on. It's the things that we remember. It's the memories that we have. And I think the reason for that is because it's much like our sense of smell, where we don't actually smell anything. We detect changes in smell. So when you live in a town that has a paper mill in it, shout out Lewiston, Idaho, you don't smell how terrible it smells every day because that smell never changes. If you live on a farm, probably the same thing. Like there's these things that when they don't change, we don't notice them. And what I found about my summer is like, with all of these weekend trips, I feel like I had a full and fun summer, although I probably spent about 95% of it staring at a computer screen, selling, shooting, like doing something business related. And what I realized is like a lot of times when I'll do a reflection at the end of the year, whether it's for a New Year's resolution thing, or if I'm having a birthday and I'm trying to like just reflect on, hey, how was this last chapter? How was this last period of my life? A lot of times I'll write down all of the things that I did, like the places that I went and the trips that I took and the memories that we made and blah, blah, blah. And so many of those things are the things that happen outside of the normal day to day. A great example is a week or two ago, me and a couple of friends went to Red Lodge, and it was just a random Thursday afternoon. We decided to take an hour-long road trip from Billings to Red Lodge and went and like skipped some rocks by the river and hung out for a minute. We grabbed dinner and shot pool for a couple hours and then drove back to Billings. And it was probably one of the most fun nights I've had this year. It's like super amazing company, great time. I came back and my cup was entirely full. And that is probably one of the things that I'll remember from this summer. The interesting thing about that is like, it wasn't a particularly on paper, like life-changing event. It wasn't anything crazy out of the ordinary. We didn't leave the country. We didn't do anything nuts. But like, I think the reason that it's so easy to remember is because any other Thursday, I probably would have gotten up and gone to the gym. I would have worked for a while. I would have gone and maybe trained in the afternoon or gotten back and made some dinner. And then that was probably about it. I don't remember those days. And I think when we look back on different periods of time, when we're trying to reflect on what happened, all of those days where like we're in our perfect routine, we go to work, we go to the gym, we go to do our things. Like I think it's important to have that kind of like that idle and keep that stuff going, but it doesn't really give anything for our memory to attach to. There's no change in any of those things. And there's nothing that like stands out remarkably. And so what I found was just by booking, like an overnight trip to go to Paradise Valley and car camp and go to the old saloon, something like that is like a 24-hour commitment. But looking back, I was like, damn, that was fun. Must have been a fun summer. Or deciding to go on these little road trips or like all of those sorts of things. I got a chance to go to my friend Luke and Zoe's cabin and spend a night there with them and their little kids. And those kinds of things are just so grounding, and they bring so much life back into the monotony and the routine and all of the things that we get caught up in. And so when I realized that it's like, if you have this timeline, the smooth part and that bar that runs through in the middle, that's your routine. That's your day to day. It's everything like just kind of like you chugging along doing your thing. But where the dots pop up and the little descriptions and the pictures and all of the stuff that we saw in the history books, those are the things where you change something. And a lot of times all it takes is a tiny bit of effort. It's saying yes to that hiking trip that your friends are going to go on. It's saying yes to going to a concert. It's saying yes to take a road trip just to get dinner somewhere. Like it's the little things that are so easy to look at and be like, oh, I'm kind of tired. I don't want to do it. Or, oh, I have a busy day tomorrow, or these different things. Like, yes, that's true. But that's just another smooth line in the middle where there's no pattern break and there's nothing for the memory to attach to. And so having that realization really encouraged me as somebody who tends to like default to discipline and routine and saying no to shit. It really encouraged me to like just say yes to more and try to like actually make a concerted effort to book things in, and maybe not even anything extravagant, but just like do stuff that's out of the ordinary. And that was a really good lesson for me. And I still felt a little bit of a sense of burnout towards the end of that season, where we got a bunch of new clients and I had to learn a bunch of stuff, and we launched a new offer and made some hires and like did all of that business activity. But that being said, it was an entirely different experience than the other times where I've just redlined and been totally burned out and screwed by the time that chapter is over. So it was very encouraging to me, and I would encourage anybody else who tends to go through those grind modes or tends to be super disciplined to say yes to some stuff and plan a couple pattern breaks in your timeline. Okay. That kind of brings me to another one of the things that I kind of laughed about and noticed with some of my other business friends during this period is a reflection on 9-to-5s. And I think it's funny. I obviously spend a lot of time in the entrepreneurial world, or whatever, as gross as that word has gotten. And it's so funny seeing all of the like, oh, buy back your time and get, freedom and blah, 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 that people hear when they're leaving their day jobs. Because there's this funny arc that happens, and I've talked to a handful of my friends that this has happened to as well, where you leave your corporate job or your 9-to-5 or whatever, and then you've got all this time freedom. All of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, I'm going to wake up at 10, or I'm going to, fuck off on a Tuesday, or I'm going to do whatever your like splurge is. And then you do whatever that thing is as you're in your beginning phases, and then your business starts to pick up, and it requires more time from you. It requires all of these things. And so you end up in the situation where you're more and more and more and more and more busy. And that's where the saying comes in, where entrepreneurs are the only people who will trade a 9-to-5 for a 24/7. And you end up in this situation where you're working nights and weekends, and you might be skipping stuff early in the morning, or Like you have to do whatever it takes to make sure that the baby survives. And after that phase, or after that chapter, once you reach maybe another level of success where you start to make some hires and you start to put some systems in place, I hear people a lot of times talk about, I'll start to hear them say things like, dude, I'm like not even taking my calls on the weekends anymore. I'm actually blocking weekends. It's like, hell yeah, dude, that's awesome. It must feel so good to like just trust that everything's going to be okay, or your people are going to handle it, or just like have enough business where you can just close your doors on the weekend and you're good. That's so awesome. And then those same people in, a year, a couple months, or however long it takes, will also come back and they'll be like, dude, I'm not doing anything in the mornings anymore until 9 a.m. I'm getting at the office at 9 and then my day starts, but I'm not picking up any calls. I'm not like writing emails. I'm taking my mornings and I'm taking my kids to school, or I'm going to the gym or whatever. And like, they're stoked on it. Hell yeah, dude. And then after a while, they come back and say the same thing about their evenings. Man, I leave my work at work. Finally, I'm at a point where like, I'll come home and I'll be able to go train, or I'll go spend time with my spouse, or I'll go do whatever. I'll go to kids' practices. It's like, cool, bro. And then one day you look up and you realize like, oh my God, I created a 9-to-5 again. And it's so funny because like, it's the thing that we all demonize, and it's like, oh, fuck a 9-to-5 and blah, 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 blah. But yes, it's a totally different experience when you're the one creating that schedule for yourself. But it's so funny to me that there's like a certain level of success with your business where you're like glorifying protecting your mornings, protecting your evenings, and actually taking weekends. And it's so funny because it's like this really cool, like full circle moment where it's like, holy shit, I just made myself a 9-to-5 again. And there are certainly levels of success past that where you start to get all sorts of time and you can do whatever you want with it. But it's one of the funny reflections that I kind of had during this busy season where I was like, damn, I can't wait until I can get my mornings back, and I can't wait until I get my evenings and then get my weekends. And I'm like, fuck, it'd be nice to have a 9-to-5 right now. And so, just kind of a funny little thing from my other business buddies. And quite frankly, for myself right now in this next phase, I am very much looking to getting a bit closer to a 9-to-5 now that we put some good systems in place and made some hires and the rest of it. So that's that. The other thing that this phase of burnout really made me relate to was something called Sunday Neurosis. And Sunday Neurosis is a concept from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He writes about it on page 107, where he says, there's a depression that happens when people realize the lack of content in their lives, when the business of the week slows down and the void inside themselves manifests. And I thought that was so interesting because what he's talking about is that on Sundays, a lot of times our week has entirely slowed down. Whatever stuff that we're still being nagged by or whatever, we've either taken care of or we've kind of like been away from it long enough for it to subside. And what I thought was really interesting is this idea that we preoccupy ourselves so much with our to-do list and the things that we're busy with, and the things that are always being asked of us during the week, whether it's, stuff with work, or if it's people who need us to drop them off at appointments, or kids' soccer stuff, or like whatever your version of it is that exists in your world. We get so preoccupied with these things. And I think that in some ways they kind of turn into cope a little bit, because when we're so busy that we don't have time to think about the things that actually fill our cup, it starts to become a crutch where we can lean on, oh, well, I don't even have time to figure out what my passions are. I don't even have time for a hobby. I don't even have time for connecting with this person or making friends or doing whatever. And this idea of Sunday Neurosis is so interesting to me because in these phases of burnout, or in these phases of super busyness, for lack of a better description, I find my brain continues, like once I start feeding it like business, it starts to feed into that and be like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is just what we're doing now. This is just what we're thinking now. And I find myself trying to fit in more work on Saturdays. It's like, oh, after run club, I could just get some work in, and then I can maybe work for 5 hours, and then in the evening I can go out and be social. Or I'll be like, oh man, not traveling this weekend, so that means Sunday is entirely free and I can work for 5 hours and set myself up for a better week, blah, blah, blah. But even the more that I start to say yes to those kinds of things, the more that more and more I'm like, okay, well, maybe how can I create more time and more time and more time? And the Sunday neurosis thing is very interesting to me because it's not very often that I decide to take a step back and I'm like, whoa, what if I just get less busy and choose something to actually fill my cup with this Sunday? Well, what fills my cup? I haven't asked myself that for a while. What can I get back into? Like, it's just such a heavy thing for me in those seasons. And so to me, what that quote reminds me of is the need that I have to step back sometimes and let the noise and the busyness try to subside just enough to remind myself, like, what are the things that I'm lacking right now? Because I think that the burnout comes from a neglect of the things that actually fill your cup and not just the things that have analytics tied to them. It's like there are no analytics for the amount of time that you spend with your friends or the, belly laughs that you had at game night on a random Wednesday, or the time that you spent in nature. Like, nobody gives you a report on that stuff. There's no, quarterly metrics that are tied to it. There's no, tracker for how many times you tell somebody you love them. But that is the stuff that matters. And it's the stuff that gets neglected, and it's the void that gets created the more that you just fill your plate with bullshit and business and like all of this, like more mentality. I think the booking stuff over the weekends was very helpful for me to remind myself that I'm a human, remind myself why I choose to do all of this work, remind myself the fact that, in some ways the work is the goal. It doesn't have to be always working towards a goal. And just like really resonated with that one in the season. And I would encourage anybody who's goes through these really busy seasons to give themselves at least a little bit of time to figure out what that void is that's being widened and gappened and like starting to become bigger and bigger because of how busy you are. Like, what are the things that you're neglecting? What gaping holes are starting to exist in your friendships or your relationships or your health or whatever, and sit in that long enough to decide if you want to make a change on it or not. So yeah, that's that. And then kind of to tie this last little section together, one of the things and like the core ideas for this phase is that, just like I talked about before, it was very important to me that I set a solid foundation inside of my business so that I could watch that thrive, so that I could see my team be successful, so that I could help my clients be successful, and so that I could create something that didn't necessarily have to use me as a crutch to continue going. And I'm super excited about where we've gotten, and the next little phase is just going to be a matter of scaling it. So we're definitely runners in the running blocks right now, and I'm super excited for everything that we've done. And what it has made me excited for in this next phase is something that I coined getting good. And I think that getting good was the main theme of, maybe the main underlying theme of this last chapter, where I decided that I couldn't just be mediocre at business anymore and have that thing do just enough where I could travel a little bit and focus a little bit on other things, and then it would rip me back into it, and I'd have to make sure that nothing was broken. And be, mediocre at the podcast where I could give it just enough and, have local guests and not travel too much and blah, blah, blah. But then, have to not focus on it for a while because the business needed my attention. Like, having that ping pong sucked. And what I realized is, for me to be good at both of those, I have to pick one and get really good at it first. And so getting good in the business is something that I chose to do in this last phase. And I think what it looks like in the next phase after this is going to be taking all of the things that we learned and getting to a point where we can scale it and deeply understand how we can bring value to the world. So I'm really excited about that. And I wrote something that is related to it that I want to read for you guys. One of the things that I noticed over the last couple of years of business is that the feedback that I get as a young business owner is very similar to the feedback that I got as a football player. I grew up with a dad who was a football coach and some kind of God-given ability to throw a football. And oftentimes what I heard was that I had potential, that I was ahead for my age, and that I was all of these blah, 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 blah. And I kind of heard it throughout my whole career, from the time I was in flag football to the time that I was in high school and all of that stuff. And at some point it stopped. And it was a very weird realization and a very weird time for me, because I was so used to hearing how good I could be and how much potential I had and how many games I could win and, all of these different things. And I remember that, like, I heard it all the way through flag football. And then people during tackle football are like, man, you're going to be so good once you get to junior high, and we can't wait to watch you do this and that. And like, you're going to be an all-state quarterback and you're going to be this and that. And then, I transfer high schools going into my sophomore year, lose all of my friends that I'd grown up with, but that's a story for another time, and play JV that year. And we absolutely crush. And it's like, oh man, next year you're going to be so good on varsity, and we're going to go to state, and we're going to have 2 great years, and blah, 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 blah. And then junior year rolls around, and I'm starting all of a sudden, and we have off-season conditioning, and then we go to team camp, and then we've got our passing tournament, and like all of these things where I stopped hearing the hype. And there was nobody coming around to be like, oh, you're going to be so good, and you're going to be great, and you're going to be this and that. And instead of them sitting there telling me how good it's going to be, those same people had their arms folded and they were standing on the sideline watching. And I realized in that moment that the praise was done and the talk of the potential was done. And instead, it had become time for me to just be good. It was time for me to prove them right. And business has been very similar in the last 3.5 going on 4 years, where, I started this thing when I was 22. People are like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that you've got, your own business and you're doing your own thing and you're paying your bills and like, you don't have a day job anymore. That's awesome. And it was, oh my gosh, man, you've like got a couple people working for you. And I saw you started doing photography and like, you got these clients. That's really cool. And then we get a little bit bigger. Oh man, so you got an office, you got this, that, and the other thing. That's great. And blah, 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 blah. And what I noticed one day is I was like, dude, the exact same thing is happening to me that happened to me when I was playing football. I'm getting this hype. I'm getting this, that, and the other thing. But like, unlike football, where I started to believe them and started to buy into that hype and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be great someday. I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. There was like a steep drop off where it was like, hey bro, have you actually been getting good? And I don't want to let that happen in my business. I went, for reference, we went 6 and 5, 7, maybe 6 and 5. My junior year of high school, we made the playoffs and lost in the first or second round. No, we lost in the first round because we got dog walked by the people that won state that year. But like, yeah, it was not a great season. And, I committed a lot to make sure that we were better senior year. But anyways, I don't want to let that same thing happen in my business. I don't want to wait until I'm in my 30s or until I have kids or until we've been around for a certain amount of time when that praise and that stuff of like, oh, you're a young business owner starts to wear off. And people look at you and they go, okay, now it's just time to be good. Are you providing benefits for your employees? How many people are full-time? Are they contracted or are they W-2? Like, what have you actually built here? Is this a great place to work? Is this blah, 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 blah. And so I'm being very intentional right now of setting a foundation where all of those things can happen. And I don't have to wait until it's crunch time or wait until that praise and that, hype starts to subside for me to be like, oh shit, I better actually do all these things that people told me I can do now. So that being said, I was on a flight on the way to Boise to go watch my little brother race his pink pony, a 2003 Mustang. Shout out to Tanner. I love you, bud. But I wrote this on the plane on the way to Boise, and I thought that it might be worth sharing. It's called Getting Good. At some point, you just have to get good. when you've grown up hearing you're such a good blank for being so young, you start to develop a complex about your potential. You start believing you're on track for greatness because you regularly hear how far ahead you are. But one day those compliments dry up, and nobody stops by to give you a warning that soon it'll no longer be good enough to be good for how young you are. The compliments just fade away with the wind, and all of a sudden it's your turn to step up to the plate and just be good. Not good for how young you are, not good for how blank you are, just good. Even playing field, the same standards for greatness as everyone else. And at that point, it's expected that your potential is actualized. It's time to put it on display. Don't wait until that day to get good. Don't fall in love with some future-based potential that allows you to rain check your greatness. Snatch your potential from the future and rip it into the present moment. Lay the foundation and just get good. That was a big note to self. Like I said before, man, I dedicated a lot of time over this last little chapter to trying to lay that foundation and to trying to get good. And I feel like I've done a good job of getting it there. And this next little phase is putting the things in place to be good. And we've got the game plan. We know how to do it. It's just a matter of doing the damn thing now. And I'm really excited about it. But it's one thing that I would encourage other people who are maybe like me to not buy into the hype and to not let the hype be a procrastination tool. Because when you believe in potential, when you believe in your own potential, it's a very good thing. But when you start to lean on your potential and use it as a tool for procrastination, it becomes a problem. Because you fall in love with this idea of your potential and what you can be and all of the things that you will achieve someday. And you start to use it as a way to continue pushing that off and further and further and further down the timeline. And the thing about potential is that it never comes. Potential is a future-based thing. And I think that the mission is to accept the fact that, yes, you do have the ability to do great things. You do have a potential to go do all this stuff. But the job at that point is to find a way to bring that potential into the present and just get good. And so I would encourage anybody who hears often that they have potential and that they have all of these different things, to choose how you can start to bring that into the present and maybe prove a couple people right, because it feels really good. Okay, so that is a couple other reflections from this last little season that I've been in. I'm a big fan of naming seasons. I think that it helps me make meaning and make an understanding of some of the different phases of life that I go through. I've been through a lot of stuff since late last year, and I coined the kind of like, I don't want to say reinvention of myself because that sounds a little corny, but I coined a chapter of like a lot of self-reflection and, for lack of a better term, getting my shit together. Chapter 1, self-development. And that lasted for maybe 6 months. I started going to therapy. I took a fight. I really cleaned up my act quite a bit, dove into the business and did some different things. Started setting personal rules for myself. One of which being that like every day I either need to talk to somebody that I love in person, or if I can't do that, then I need to call somebody that I love to make sure that I'm staying in connection with my people. Helps from burnout and all these different things. But started doing a lot of stuff like that in that chapter. And towards the end of that, a similar cycle like I was in before started to happen. The business started getting good. I decided to start traveling a little bit and spending a little bit more time on the podcast and blah, blah, blah. And then right around that time, we had a GM, found out she was having a baby, and decided to do the right thing for her kid and just go all in on being a mom and like focusing on her pregnancy, which is awesome. But that sent me down an absolute spiral where I was slapped in the face with the fact that I had this tendency of getting just good enough, putting somebody in place to run things, and then dipping out and not actually seeing it through. And it was a huge wake up call and one of the most difficult moments I've had in business for a number of reasons. But it was tough. And I realized in that moment that I could either fold and quit and all of that, or I could be like, okay, well, I just did all this work on myself and it fucking sucks that I have to go do blah, 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 blah. Now that this person is gone in the business, but I could use this as a time to really set that foundation to be able to be like all of my other buddies who I look up to, who can actually choose to spend their time doing whatever they want to do because they've set the foundation in their business. Or I can just fall back into the same pattern. And so what I decided to do in that moment was I was like, nope, this is the time where I figure it out. I'm going to do it. So I titled this last chapter, Chapter 2, Professional Development. And ironically, that lasted from about March this year until literally today. After this podcast, I get to go home and erase Chapter 2, Professional Development from my mirror and write Chapter 3, Getting Good, next. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, I don't know, super helpful for me. Name your chapters and help make a little bit of sense of them. Alrighty. The next thing that I wanted to jump into is a couple of insights, I suppose, that I've been keeping track of the last couple months in my iPhone Notes app. The folder that I keep these in is called The Creative Act, which is a nod to Rick Rubin. And a lot of these are ideas that hit me randomly. So they're things, inspiration can kind of come knocking at any time. And so whether it's me driving or reading or meditating or in the shower or whenever it is, one thing that I found is if I write down something when I get inspiration, it allows that flow to continue and it allows the ideas to keep coming. And something about it keeps me in practice of like maybe showing the universe like, hey, if you give me ideas, I'm going to do something with them. The problem is a lot of times, I've told you how busy I get at times, but a lot of times I don't have the kind of time that I feel is required to entirely expand on an idea the minute that it hits me. And so in those moments, what I found is really helpful is going into this notes app and just leaving myself some version of a breadcrumb, right? Like if I'm on a plane, I can write an entire thing or I can do whatever. But if I'm driving, sometimes it's helpful to hit a red light and write one sentence about the idea that hit me so that then later when I'm laying in bed that night or journaling in the morning or whatever, I can choose to expand on that idea and give it the time and the attention that I feel like it deserves. And so it's a great practice for anybody else who's creative with writing or really has any creative act whatsoever. It's something that I started maybe last spring. And I've noticed that I have felt more well thought. I felt more connected. I feel like my flow of inspiration has been a little bit stronger and I've just been a little bit more inspired in general when I respond to it this way. So that being said, I've got a couple that I want to share with you guys. And one of them is actually, ironically, a shower thought that hit me last week. What I wrote down is speak as if the best version of you is listening. And this came off of a session that I had with Summer, who is my therapist, although therapist is a ridiculous word for Summer because she does so much. Everything from, well, we don't need to get into all the details, but she freaking rocks. What I love about Summer is instead of dwelling on the past and trying to get you to tell her stories about why you might hate your dad, she focuses on the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of life that you want to live, and uses a ton of different tools to help you get there. And there are different tools that are more helpful on different days. But what I absolutely love about Summer is she uses your life now, your life in the future, and your life in the past to draw inspiration and different tools to get you to the place that you want to go instead of making you live in a place or like encouraging you to live in a place where you're feeling sorry for yourself for the things that happen to you. So anyways, quick soapbox on Summer. If you live anywhere near the Billings area, I could not recommend somebody more. And she has probably helped me more than anybody get through the things that I have in the last year. So Summer, if you're listening, love you. Thank you so much. Anyways, we started doing a little bit of a deep dive on the 4 agreements a couple weeks ago. And it's one of my favorite books, and I'm so glad that she's into it as well. One of the things that I think inspired this idea of speak as if the best version of yourself is listening is actually a Don Miguel Ruiz idea from the 4 agreements called Be Impeccable with Your Words. And on the website they just got for it, he describes be impeccable with your word as the first and most important of the 4 agreements is be impeccable with your word. The word is your power of creation, and that power can be used in more than one direction. One direction is impeccability, where the world creates a beautiful story, your personal heaven on earth. The other direction is a misuse of the word, where the word destroys everything around you and creates your personal hell. And what I love about this is the idea that your word can be used to create the things around you. And it's really easy to watch. Like if you need an immediate example, tell somebody sitting across from you that you love them, say, I love you, and watch how they react. And then maybe on the opposite side of this spectrum, say, I hate you. See how they change. We're both sitting in the exact same spot. We said 2 different things, and now our reality has changed and our world has changed around us because of what we said. And one of the things that I love about this idea of speak as if the best version of you is listening is that I think that it honors whatever our highest potential and the highest version of ourselves is. There's been plenty of moments where, speaking for myself, I've said something that's out of turn, or I've gotten frustrated in a moment and said something that I didn't want to, or, maybe I could have been more tactful or something like that, where I have a moment where I could have been better. And then me in the future looks back on that and goes, fuck, man. Matthew McConaughey says bogey. And we have these bogey moments because we have probably learned from that and we've gotten better, or we're in a better state. And what I think that this idea is helpful for is I think that we have a best version of ourselves that can be honored, right? Like going to the gym honors the best version of ourselves. Being honest with people honors the best version of ourselves. Picking a passion that we actually care about, bringing value to the world. There's so many things that can be an honor to that. But I think that speaking as if the best version of you is listening is a way to think about okay, after this moment, when I've learned this lesson, when I've, become the better version of myself, how am I going to look back on this moment? How is what I choose to say right now, how would that change if that person was sitting in the room and my goal was to honor them? And Chris Williamson's got a really great idea on this. It's one of his most shared insights. And he was talking to one of his friends who claims to have always wondered if he was a coward. He thought himself to be this strong person and being capable and all these different things, but he would always wonder that when the time comes, if he's the guy that could step up and make the play and do the big thing and be successful in a moment where it mattered. And this guy said, I could always hear my better self clearing his throat in the room next door. And I wondered if he was going to kick the door in when I needed him to show up. And I think that that's just such a powerful thing. And it's kind of a nod to the same idea. But I think that there's a lot of things that we would change when people that we admire are in the room. We might choose not to gossip. We might choose to be a bit more positive. We might choose to choose our words a little bit more carefully. And I think that it is probably in our best interest to pretend or to imagine, what would I say? How would I act? How would I handle this situation if the best version of me is sitting in this room? Because how I choose to act in this moment, or what I choose to say, is going to determine if I get closer or further from being that person. And so, I don't know, random shower thought, and a helpful reminder and a helpful visual for me when I've got hard conversations to have with my team or with people in my life or whatever. And I hope that one's helpful for you too. The next thing is kind of on the spoken word train, I suppose. And it's this idea. I have an idea that honesty is a recalibration to reality. And the reason for that is because I think that when we lie, we start to create a version of reality that isn't real. It's not true. It's just like we're living in la la land. And every time that we do something that is dishonest, either with ourselves or with somebody else, it gets us further and further away from reality. And this was coming up in a conversation that I was having with a friend, where they were effectively trying to decide if they wanted to stay like in a relationship, or if they needed to change things, or if they needed to have hard conversations. You know, they had told me that like, oh yeah, I had all of these things that I wanted to say for a month or two, and it was so difficult. And I finally just like broke down and said all of them. And it was really hard, but now we're in a place where like, we can both make decisions on it. We can choose like what things do we need to fix, what things are non-negotiables, what blah, blah, blah. But like it brought us so much closer together, and I was so scared to have this conversation for so long. And it's not one of the things that was one of my strong suits in the past. So I was like, I feel you, sister. But what I realized in that moment is like, the more that you sweep things under the rug and go, oh no, it's fine. Or, whatever the thing is, and the more that you get away from whatever that sense of reality is, those lies start to create a false reality where you and a friend, or you and a partner, or you and a group of people are operating on this sense of reality that isn't true. Like you're making decisions based on things that are not grounded in truth. You're making judgments on things where you might not know the entire answer, the entire perspective. And by just choosing to be honest and be honest about when you love somebody, be honest about when you're grateful for them, be honest when there's things that you need them to change in order to be a better employee, a better friend, a better husband, a better wife, a better whatever. And some of those conversations are so hard to have because honesty is not always the easiest route. It doesn't seem like in our brains. Like, for me, for example, in my past relationship, I was hesitant to have hard conversations because I was like, we could have that conversation right now and like, it'll be heavy and blah, blah, blah. Or I could just sweep it under the rug tonight and we can make dinner and we can relax and have a chill night and like cap this off as a good day. And what happens by like pushing that off and off and off and off and off is that it creates this like, again, I think that it's kind of just a long-tailed lie where it creates this sense where, oh no, everything must be great. No, it's not great. And you're lying to yourself and you're choosing not to have this conversation because you want things to be easy. And so with all that being said, I feel like I'm rambling just a bit, but I think that it's a very helpful idea for me to think about honesty as a recalibration to reality, because it encourages me to have difficult conversations with the people who are around me so that we can all respect each other and choose to make decisions based on things that are factual and real. And I think that that's really important because when that's the case, it allows you to build stronger relationships. It allows you to discard relationships that don't belong in your life. It allows you to make important decisions based on things and like data that's real. It's like everything gets better by just being willing to do the hard thing up front instead of letting the hard thing be maintaining a lie and waiting for this long heated conversation at the end of this period and like all of this stuff. Just like rip all that to the front. Do the hard thing now, operate on honesty, and the right things are going to fall into place because you're coming back to reality. And if the reality is that this person doesn't belong in your life, see ya. If the reality is that they were kind of waiting to have this conversation too, and you get to move forward now, beautiful. Guess whose relationship just got stronger? So it's a big note to self to have hard conversations. This thing is such a bitch as a people pleaser because you always want to just shove your own stuff down and try to please somebody. But this idea has been really helpful. And some of the hard conversations that I've had that I thought were going to be a big blow up fight or be a nightmare or whatever, have actually brought me closer to a lot of the people that I really care about. So, honesty is a recalibration to reality. All right, we've got a couple more. The next thing that hit me, and this is a piece that I chose to write on as well from that creative act notes, is I had an idea at one point, and it just kind of popped into my head, and it literally, I don't know where it came from, but there's something that snapped into my head and just goes, "What are you running from?" I was like, that's kind of funny. And I like felt myself get defensive all of a sudden. And as I'm saying this, it sounds a bit schizophrenic, but listen to the message, not the not the weirdness. But I thought about it and I was like, I felt real defensive right away. I was like, I'm not running from shit. What are you talking about? I'm in this. But I realized as I thought, I was like, well, why do I get defensive about that question? Like I'm probably running from something. What is it? And it made me think about the fact that like our society tends to see that question as being very aggressive almost. If you were to randomly ask somebody, "Hey, dude, what are you running from?" I think that'd be a very defensive, like, "What do you mean? I'm not running from anything. I'm right here." And it caused me to reflect on that a little bit. And I wrote something that I think will help tie together a little bit and maybe avoid some of my ranting. But I want to read this, and if you guys have the chance or have any thoughts on this stuff, please feel free to shoot me a DM or ask me about it in person. That's one of my favorite things ever. But I'll read it real quick, and then we'll have a little discussion on it. Here we go. What are you running from? In society, we tend to see this question as a challenge. We puff our chest out and we claim we're not running from anything, 10 toes down. But why do we defend ourselves from the notion that we're running away from something? When a mouse runs towards a wheel of cheese, its speed is dramatically increased when there's a cat behind it. Same cheese, different circumstance. Don't fault the mouse. So what is it that we're running from? And is it useful to know that we're running from it instead of pretending that there's nothing chasing us? Are we running from a sense of mediocrity? From being like our parents? From duplicating a past relationship that hurt us? There are noble and wise things to run from, just as there are noble things to run towards. I think the point is to know why we're running, to know that it's a meaningful race so that we can make sense of the exhaustion, the fear, the motivation, and the eventual victory. So I wrote that because I didn't like how defensive I felt about this idea that I was running from something. Because the reality of the situation is, I think that it seems like a noble thing in our culture to talk about the thing that we're chasing, but not the thing that we're running from. Like, we'll talk about the white picket fence. We'll talk about the boat that we want to get. We'll talk about the perfect family. We'll talk about all of these things that are our goals, and society kind of rewards us for it. It's like, oh man, you have such big aspirations and you're so driven, you're so blah, 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 blah. And it's really easy to talk about because a lot of that stuff is positive. What I think is true, however, is that a lot of us are playing this game where we're running towards the cheese and we have a cat behind us at the same time. And I think that for whatever reason, we all want to disregard the fact that we're being chased by some kind of cat. And just like I wrote about in that thing, I think that there are some things that are noble to run away from, right? Like if somebody might have grown up in an abusive household and they refuse to spank their kids because they're running from ever being a abusive parent because they felt like they, or because they were abused as a child. Very noble thing to run from. There are people who might run away from poverty because they grew up in a really difficult household, and so they will work all the hours in the day to make sure that their family is provided for. Very noble thing to run from. And so I don't think that those should be things that we are defensive about. Like, I think that it's actually a very beautiful conversation to think about what the things that we are motivated to run faster towards the cheese for, because that thing back behind us is really ugly, really scary. And it caused me to reflect a little bit and think about like, yeah, man, what are the things that I run from? What are the things that, there may be things that I like, I confuse me running towards the cheese and be like, nope, that's why I'm running so fast. Just because I want to have the freedom. It's because I want to have great experiences with my friends. I want to provide for my family. I want to do all these things. Like, that's the only thing. But in reality, it's like, there's so many times where that desire for that end goal probably doesn't warrant how hard I try and how fast I am, how exhausted I am. So it gets really fucking confusing when I decide to put myself through all of this shit. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't really know. Should I be working this hard? Because it's like, yeah, I want all these things, but do I need to have them that fast? Do I need to have this? Do I need to have that? And it becomes confusing, and I don't think it provides enough context for like why we work so hard, or why we have such strong non-negotiables, or why we, quote unquote, are who we are, because we're totally disregarding half of the equation. And, I think that, in that section right there where it says, I think the point is to know why we're running, to know that it's a meaningful race so that we can make sense of the exhaustion, the fear, the motivation, and the eventual victory. I think that like just having that context for why do I have such strong non-negotiables? It's okay if it's because, yes, you want something to be true and you have this goal, and because you want to make damn sure that something never happens again. I think that that's totally okay. And I think that also when you talk about the eventual victory, I think that it makes a victory so much sweeter when you know all of the losses that could have happened, or how close some of the games were, how hard you worked, and where where you came from. Because it adds meaning to not just having the end goal, but also giving credit to yourself for like, yeah, dude, you didn't do the fucking thing. You didn't get caught by the cat. You didn't slip up. You held your word and you did the thing. And to me, I think that during this last phase where I was super dedicated to trying to get things in order professionally, I think that it provided some context to me for like, okay, there are things that I'm running from in this phase. It's not just that I want to be able to get to a place where I can go all in on the podcast, or get to a place where I can have, these things for my team, or where I can travel, or where I can spend more time with my friends. Like, there are all of these different goals, yes, but there's also a lot of stuff that I'm running from that make me work as hard as I do, instead of just being like, that shit'll figure itself out, or maybe I'll pick up business in a couple of years. I'm just going to go do something else, or blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to go chase this other thing. It's like, there's a reason that I think that it provides meaning to the suffering. And so some of the things that I started to reflect on of like what I was running from is, one of them was poverty. And I feel like, while I had a lot of, had a great upbringing. My parents are amazing, and I had a lot of opportunities in my life. I got to see a very interesting perspective when my parents got divorced, and lived in two different financial positions. And every other week we would change houses, and there were, pretty significantly different financial, situations in each house. And what I realized is less about money being an idea or like a number in a bank account, and money being something that allows you to provide and experience things. And so to me, I don't want to look at my kid someday and tell him he can't go to a basketball tournament because I can't afford it. And I don't want to look at my wife one day and say, hey, we can't go on this vacation, or we can't go until next year because I can't afford it, or we can't go fly to see your family because of blah, blah, blah. Like, there are so many things that there's so many things that I want to be able to do in my life, and money just happens to be the fuel that helps me get there. Like, I think that I run away from poverty because I'm running away from the idea of letting people that I care about down. And, that is a very motivating thing for me. Like, I want to be able to, fly my friends out and go have a fun vacation and be like, hey guys, don't worry about the stuff. Like, I got you. Let's just go have fun. Or I want to be able to pay for my kids' college someday if they're not athletes and they don't get scholarships, or, even academic scholarships. I want to be able to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to be able to invest in my friends' companies. Like there's so many things that, yes, I want all of these things for, but I am very much acknowledging the fact that I'm running away from having to tell somebody that I care about no, or something's impossible. Or, hey, we just can't afford that. Or, hey, that's where, the other people eat. That's where, fancy people get to go to that restaurant, or, rich people sit in first class, or whatever the thing is. Like, regardless of how small or how big it is, I am running away from letting down the people that I care about. And so that one was one of them. I'm also running away from this idea of not belonging. Much like the poverty thing, there's, my family works very hard, and there have been generations of people who have just been very hard workers and have been in all sorts of different industries that are just like fucking hard work. Not all of the hardest working jobs are the best paying jobs. And there have been moments where we've sat down, where I remember sitting down in nice restaurants growing up and feeling like people would know that I didn't belong there, and feeling like we were a guest at the table and that we were on some kind of a field trip to how other people lived. I remember feeling like when I got introduced to people who were in business or people who seemed successful, that I wasn't like them. Like I was oh yeah, you're like that friend that we see at the family barbecue who's like not really in our circle, but you're here because you're blah, blah, blah's cousin or nephew or whatever. And I just hated that. I hated that feeling where it was like, I don't belong here, I don't fit in, or I'm not good enough, and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that has carried with me. And I'm very much running away from that, because I want to be able to walk into a room and feel like I belong there, and I can provide value, and I can help the people that are there, and I can bring something positive to their lives or to their business or something. I'm very much running away from that feeling and that sense of not fitting in or not being good enough, or, not getting a seat at the table. And so there are things that I do to run away from that a bit. Now, granted, do I need to run as hard? Do I need to run as fast? Do I need to get as exhausted running away from that feeling as I do running away from letting the people that I care about down? Probably not. But regardless, I think that that's a good example of like why it matters to take a minute to think about that other half of the equation of like, what are you running towards and what you're running from? Because I think that it adds perspective about why we make some of the decisions that we do. Maybe put a little bit of perspective about what things are worth running from and how hard. Okay. And then the last one. This is an idea that Drew McManus introduced me to quite a while ago, actually. And it's something that's just carried with me for the longest time. I think that we were on a long stretch on the tour bus when he first brought this up to me. And it's this idea of Sonder. It's Sonder. It's a word that I had never heard before, and I was fascinated by it, as I am many of the things that dude says. So I think he's one of the first 5 episodes in this podcast. So if you want a taste of one of the most insightful dudes that I've ever interacted with, go check one of those episodes out. It was a really cool conversation and a cool phase of his life. So anyways, this idea of Sonder. The definition of Sonder, before we get into it, says that Sonder is the realization that every stranger has a complex life as vivid and as intricate as your own, filled with their own ambitions, friends, worries, and routines. It's coined in the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Sounds like a cool dictionary. Says Sonder highlights that everyone is the protagonist of their own story, not merely an extra in yours. And I just love this freaking idea, man. This idea of Sonder is so cool to me because, and I feel it in airports the most, I think I feel it in airports the most because there's this like really cool space where you all kind of exist in this building at the same time, but you're all going somewhere different and likely have a reason to be going there that's out of the norm, like pattern breaks, right? The thing that we talked about earlier, where most of the time we don't spend all of our time flying, right? It's a lot of times I feel like we fly because we we're going to see family or a concert or a vacation or connecting with somebody or whatever the thing is. But there's like, you're catching them in one of these pattern break moments. And it's so cool to me to think about all of the different stories about why people are traveling and like what's going on in their lives and all these things. But that being said, I've been reflecting on this idea of Sonder a lot because in this last phase of my life where I got super busy and, I was just like super honed in on professional stuff. A lot of times I can start to think that things professionally matter a lot more than they do in the grand scheme of things. Like, I might stay up until 1 a.m. trying to get this thing done to meet this deadline, where if I would have just texted the person, I would have realized that the next day they actually have meetings all day and they can't review it anyways. And I probably could have got my sleep back. But like, no, I turn things in on time. I do this, I do that. It's like, well, bro, like, yeah, but like these other people have lives too. And they're also having deadlines to meet and they also have blah, 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 blah. And so this idea of Sonder is really, it's like a good way for me to zoom out a bit and realize that like, yes, do I see myself as the main character of this movie that I'm living, in life? Sure. But so does everybody else. And some of the things that I get so wrapped up in professionally and all these different things are like, sometimes it's helpful for me to think that like, when I'm feeling all of this pressure, when I think that I need to do all these things, when I feel like I need to be ahead in life or make all these decisions or whatever, it's helpful for me to zoom out and be like, oh, so does everybody else, man. We're all just trying to figure this out. And I think that it's a very humbling way of looking at things as well, because we feel very self-important when we get absorbed in all of our own bullshit. And when I can zoom out of that a little bit and just be like, dude, everybody's got this going on. Everybody's trying to figure out how to achieve their dream life. Everybody's trying to figure out how to have great relationships and make great friends and live in the place they want to live. And like, these are common human experience things. Like, it's okay. It's so helpful for me and adds so much context to the things that I'm struggling with. And yeah, it's a really cool thing for me to reflect on. So, that being said, there was one day that I was feeling, I was actually journaling. I was getting maybe a little bit self-righteous about how cool it was that I would have this journal to look back on someday. And then I can pass it to my kids and they can know what I was thinking about. And then they could pass it to their kids and they can be like, hey, this is what grandpa was thinking about and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking about how cool it'd be if I had my grandfather's journal, who is one of the heroes in my life and all of these things. And like, I started getting a little wrapped up in this idea that like, oh, how fucking cool is it? Like what I'm doing. There's so many people who would benefit from reading this. And then I realized, I was like, hey, bud, are you the only one that keeps a journal? No. Do other people keep journals? Yes. And this idea of Sonder is that they are the main character of their stories as well. And they've got all of these thoughts. They've got a complex story. They've got, side characters and side quests and main missions and all these different things that are also very interesting. And their families are going to love to read them and all of these things. Like, yes, is what they're writing inherently special? Of course it is, because it's their experience and the human experience is a beautiful thing. Is what I'm writing special? Yes, of course it is. And everybody else is too, which by nature of it makes none of it special. Everything is as equally special and as equally not special at the exact same time, which to me is a beautiful reminder that like, it's our job as the main character of our own story to write as beautiful of a story as possible, because everybody else is trying to do the same thing. And if along that story, you can be a positive character in as many other people's journeys as possible as well, then like that to me is a life well lived. Like write every fucking page that you can in this thing. Try to show up on as many other people's pages as you can as a positive character that gets them closer to that final plot and that final conclusion that they're aiming for. And do it with the understanding that nobody sees themselves as a side character in their story. Like, take yourself out of your fucking self-righteous like thing for a minute and realize that you're a side character in everybody else's story. It's your job to understand that just like they play a role in your life, you play a role in theirs. And to me, it's just such a beautiful idea that like we all are experiencing the special thing together, and it's our experience is special. So is everyone else's, which means none of them are. And it brings me back to reality a bit. But anyways, as I was journaling and kind of laughing when I had that realization of like, dude, everybody else writes a journal too. Like this isn't that special. I wrote this thing that reflects that. And I'm going to read it. I hope you enjoy it. It's called The Poem I'll Leave Behind. I'll tell myself that mine is special. The characters, the plot, the romance of life. But maybe everyone leaves one behind and it's just as special as mine, which makes our story equally as unique as they are ordinary, equally as loud as they are quiet. Maybe everyone told them they were special before their time was through, that they had impact, potential, and something to go prove. And maybe they left a poem about it too, and it will sit precariously on a shelf when estate sale patrons come passing through. Just like the poem I'll write about me and the poem you'll write about you. Just a quick little thing on, brief little thing on Sonder, but so those are a couple of the things that I have been kind of collecting as little mental tokens over this last little chapter. And like I said, these solo podcasts are a really exciting time for me to be able to share some of those things with you guys. And, a lot of people that listen to this are people that are really close to me. I don't have an opportunity to check in with all of the friends that I want to and the family that I want to and all those things all the time. And so what this podcast allows me to do is it allows me to have half of those conversations, even if they're a one-sided way, and like maybe connect with people as much as I can. I would love to be able to sit down with my mom and talk about that idea of Sonder. I would love to talk to my dad and see, hey man, like these are things that I run from. What did you run from? And all those sorts of things. But, that's not always possible. And it means a lot that you guys are here to listen to these things, and it feels cool to share. And so we're going to keep doing it. But anyways, that's some of the things I've been collecting in the Creative Act notes app over the last couple months. And now we'll get into the Q&A section. Really excited about this. This time the Q&A was kind of dominated by a few people, and they're all people who I value in my life and people whose opinions are ones that I take into consideration when I'm making decisions and all that. So I'm excited to have a couple of the same names pop up in here and get into some of these questions. But it's really helpful for me and very rewarding for me to hear some of the things that you are all thinking about, and be able to riff on them a little bit, because it brings a lot into my life and helps me think about the world as well. So to anybody who submitted questions this time or last time, thank you for your curiosity. Thank you for being well thought, and for buying into this thing. I think it makes it special. So number one is from Jerome Miller, and he asked, go-to coffee order. This is one of my favorite questions. One of the life tips that I have for anybody who goes to meetings or gets coffee with people often is to keep a coffee note in your notes app. And when you beat somebody to coffee, ask them what their coffee order is and write it down in your notes app. And the reason why is because it is one of the most rewarding things to go to coffee with somebody and listen to their order or order for them. And the next time that you guys get coffee together, beat them there and have their exact order waiting there for them, and show them that you care about them. I've taken a lot of these down and only had an opportunity to actually execute on it a couple times, but it's always brought a big smile to my face every time. So these are my coffee orders if you want to start your note with that one. And I would encourage everyone else to do the same. So my go-to coffee order depends on the time of day. In the mornings, if I'm being a good boy, I'll just go with black coffee or an Americano. If I'm having a little sweet treat, I like to have a latte with honey and cinnamon, or sometimes I'll have a dirty chai. But if you're meeting me for a meeting somewhere or we're just hanging out, black coffee is always a safe bet, or latte with honey and cinnamon is also a good go-to if you think I'm going to be in a silly, goofy mood. And then in the afternoons, my guy Jason Townsley put me on to the afternoon iced Americano, which effectively doubled my caffeine consumption, but boy, was he onto something. So If it's after maybe about 1:00, get me in there with a nice Americano. The next one is from Caden Venata, my guy. Shout out to the House of Hunks. He said, if you could sit down with one celebrity and just listen, who would it be? And I like this like variation of this question. I feel like a lot of people ask the question of like, if you could sit down with anybody and have a conversation or blah, blah, blah. But I like this idea of sitting down and just listening. And this was the first thing that came to mind, and it was not necessarily what I expected, but I think that it's true. I think that it'd be Matthew McConaughey. A couple of the podcasts that he's done, specifically the first one that he did with Chris Williamson on Modern Wisdom, got me through one of the most difficult times of my life. And I probably listened to it 10 times front to back throughout those different phases. But what I love about listening to McConaughey is that he had a interesting upbringing for sure, but like his upbringing is relatable. The way that his family raised him, the study abroad year that he did in Australia, some of the breaks that he had in his acting career and deciding to go to film school instead of law school, and like all of these different things. What I love about Matthew McConaughey is he's a very, very thoughtful human who has a ton of life experience that kind of touches on a lot of the different things that people want to do. He's lived in an Airstream trailer for 4 years. He's been an A-lister in Hollywood. He's traveled in the Amazon and in Africa. And like, he's done all of these different things that each of them by themselves would probably equate to somebody saying that they had a life well lived just by doing one of them. And he's kind of been able to pull straws from a bunch of different areas in life. And I think that he's got an amazing perspective because of that. And so I think that he is a funny version of a modern day philosopher. And I would just love to sit and listen to his view on the world. And I also appreciate that in all of the interviews that I've seen with him, he seems like he's truly being himself. And is not trying to be impressive or staged or acting or anything like that. So yeah, I think it'd be Matthew McConaughey. Just keep on living, baby. Livin. The next one's also from Jerome Miller. He asked, if you had to start a new business tomorrow, what would it be? This is an interesting question because I think that this is this is probably something that entrepreneurs think about constantly. It's like new businesses and new opportunities and stuff like that. And I think that it's something that business owners kind of battle with a little bit, this idea of shiny object syndrome. I think that when you're wired to see opportunities, bring value to the world, create solutions, I think that it's hard to turn that part of your brain off once it exists. And there's a lot of different opportunities that I've seen that could be fun or could be potentially profitable or all these different things. But honestly, dude, if I had to start a new business tomorrow, I would probably just restart my own business that I have right now. I'd redo Storyline Media Company. And I would just do what I've done already, but I'd do it faster. And, yeah, I mean, it's so easy to think about all of the different things that you could do and all the opportunities that are out there and stuff like that. But, my goal right now, man, is just like, I've put so much into this freaking thing, emotionally and financially and all that kind of stuff that like, I think that I would just get right back into my business, man. I think I'd go do the dang thing. If you want an out of the box answer, I think it'd be cool to have like a private jet company or maybe a wakeboarding company would be cool. So, yeah, but I'm going to try and, disregard my shiny object syndrome right here and say that if I had to start a new one tomorrow, I'd start my business that I have now. The next one is from my little brother, my big little brother, Tanner. He asked, have you taken aspects of your podcast convos and applied them to your business? Yes. I've found through my, few years of business experience that a lot of business is just people. It's people when you're selling, it's people when you're delivering, it's people when you're hiring, it's people when you're managing. Like it's all of this stuff. Like, yes, you have to deliver a thing at some point, but like, unless you're in manufacturing, most of the stuff is just dealing with people. And even if you're in manufacturing, you're probably dealing with engineers who are going to deal with the thing. So you're dealing with people still anyways. And so yeah, I think that it's super helpful. Some of the people, really all of the people that I've had on the podcast, are people that I admire and people who have an awesome perspective on life. And what's cool about this podcast is I am able to learn from all of those people. And I think that it makes me a more well-rounded, well-thought person. And I hope that I am able to become a better person and better understand the team around me, the clients around me, and all of those kinds of things, and like understand things on a human level with them. Because I think that pretty much all good business happens from a human standpoint, and then you can figure out the delivery and the value and all the stuff after that. So I think in that way that like this podcast makes me a better person, and by nature of that, I can be a better leader, a better team member, a better everything in business. It also like, I just apply a lot of this to my life, man, like not even just business. And one of the notes that I took down here is like, one of my favorite things is when the crossover between the podcast and real life happens. While this is something that you're probably listening to on headphones or watching on a screen or whatever, and it like feels like it's a real thing, the reality of the situation is that there are big studio lights in here, and there's big light bars, and there's a camera right there and a camera right there, and I'm sitting in a room by myself in a box talking to these lenses. I'm a heavy consumer of podcasts, so it feels like I understand the connection that comes from it. It feels like in some way, you know, I've got a connection to the people that I've listened to because I've heard so many of their conversations and the way that they think about the world. But the real of the whole thing is like, a lot of times it's just a conversation that you had in a room with somebody, or it's me talking to cameras that are set up pointing at my face right now. And when the crossover happens where I meet somebody in the real world who has listened to the podcast, or one of my friends or colleagues or something like that has listened, and then they mention something about it, they say, hey man, you said this one thing, or your guest had this idea and it's, you know, impacted my life, or whatever the version is. It's one of the most rewarding things in the world for me, because it's like, it makes it feel like the thing that we're doing here is actually impacting the world, and that it's making a difference in people's lives. And some of the messages that I've received or things that people have told me in person are just so freaking sweet. And like this show right now, it's not making any money. It's quite the opposite, actually. We're truly in it for the love of the game, as cliche as that is. Like, I'm in it because I love giving people that I care about the opportunity to like tell their story. I love the opportunity to get to learn from them. I love being able to share that with people that I care about. And I just love it, man. It's fucking awesome. And so when I get a chance to have a conversation with somebody and like hear those words of encouragement, or even have them come to me and be like, dude, I've been thinking about this idea. Like, we have to hash this out. Like, I've been wanting to talk to you about this. There's nothing that brings a bigger smile to my face in those moments. So I really enjoy when there are aspects of the podcast that carry over into real life, whether it's personal stuff or business. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody who I can tell that they're like hesitating to be like, hey, I listened to this thing on your podcast or blah, blah, blah. It like feels like that's like maybe an awkward moment at times where they hesitate. And I don't know where it comes from, but this is, if you're listening to this right now, this is my gaping door wide open. I fucking love it when you guys lead a sentence with, I was listening to your podcast and blah, blah, blah. So whatever that weirdness is, don't be weird. I love talking about things that come from this show. And I feel like it's a really cool way to be able to like immediately connect with somebody or immediately jump into a really interesting conversation. So yeah, a little bit rambly, but I hope that answers your question, dude. And thanks for throwing that in there. Love you to death. Hope you're having a good day. The next one is from Bokman. Connor is a dude that I respect the heck out of and have had some really great conversations with, and has done some really cool things here in Billings and in my hometown in Boise. His question is, when are you going to have me on a podcast? I get a couple that are like this here and there, but I wanted to make a point out of this one. So, Connor, I would love to have you on a podcast. This is your official invite to this podcast right now. So if you have made it this far, I am not going to text you to say yes or no about if you're on the podcast. I want to know if you actually listen to this thing. And If you do, then shoot me a text. You've got my number, and we will get something on the calendar, and I would love to have you on the show. Yeah, dude, I think your story is awesome. Every time that we get coffee, I get super stoked about it. And I would love for that text to pop up. So if you're listening, shoot me a text. And if not, and you're Connor's friend and you're listening to this and you want him to come on the show, shoot him a text and tell him that he should scroll ahead a little bit and listen to this invite. So you're awesome, dude. Would love to have you on. Okay, this next one's a little heavy. I've been mentally preparing for this one all day, but it's from my friend Hunter Fisk. Hunter is one of the most positive and insightful people I've ever met, and somebody who I was like instantly amazing friends with when I met her. So Hunter, love you to death, screaming it from the mountaintops. Hunter asked, if you could have dinner with any version of yourself, past, present, or future, who would it be, and what would that combo look like? The reason that this one is so heavy for me is because this is also something that came up in a session with Summer. And for the first time in my life, my answer is different than it used to be. I spent a lot of time growing up and really in my life now planning for the future, trying to look through the crystal ball, trying to get everything right, trying to, for lack of a better description, just win, I suppose. And a lot of times I have sacrifice things in the moment now in the hopes that it will be worth it in the future. And so in the past, I would have answered this question that I would love to talk to my future self. And I probably would have wanted to hear about the things that made it successful. I'd want to know the partner that we ended up with. I'd want to know about our kids. I'd want to know about where we lived. I'd want to learn about the adventure and, what was success? What could we have done better? What was blah, 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 blah. I just want all the perspective so that I could do things right and win, right? Recently, my answer has changed to that. The podcast title and like the name of this show is Pressed for Presence because it's one of the things I struggle most with. The reason it's called Pressed for Presence is because I feel like I'm pressed or like I've got this pressure to try and have more presence in my life. It's one of the things that I've always struggled with, and I've always tended to be this future-paced thinker. I miss a lot of moments because of that. I say no to barbecues. I sit around in a moment where I could be cooking with somebody or relaxing or something like that, thinking about business or thinking about how I should be being productive or like just like not living in the moment. And this podcast has helped me a lot. I'm really trying to get better about that. And I think I have to. So that being said, I would like to have dinner with my past self. I was in a session with Summer a couple of weeks ago, and I had one of the more profound experiences I've ever had in my life. It was doing something called a dyad. A dyad is and Summer, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry if I butcher this, but effectively it's like a co-meditation that is, you kind of end up in like a meditative state, but you're also kind of speaking back and forth. And so it's a guided meditation where you're being prompted to think about things, you're going through it, you're responding, being prompted again, kind of like going down this very meditative rabbit hole into wherever you go. We were focusing on some of the things that came up during this like burnout period, this really busy period in my life. And it kind of relates a little bit to like some of the things I was running from and some of that stuff. But I think that what Summer was trying to help me realize is like where some of my tendencies to just work really hard and try to, fight for a seat at the table and try to like do all these things were coming from. And through this guided meditation, she took me to a place where me now ended up on the playground with me when I was a kid. And the way that she took me there is she asked some guided questions about where was I, who was I, what was the place where some of the difficulties that I had now started. I realized that it was at my elementary school, and this phase, I like think about my life in chapters, and I've always thought about this phase like in this moment. I had never attached this meaning to it before, but I was on the playground at morning recess before school started. I was wearing one of those goofy beanies with like the little bill on them that like, I think it was like a Tony Hawk, like bill beanie or something like that. Dorky ass shoes. I always had dorky shoes growing up because I think my parents knew that I was going to like try to throw for 500 yards every recess, playing football. And so I like had dorky shoes on, dorky clothes, had a, backwards hat, which is no fault of my parents. I just had no style growing up. Probably still don't. And, my parents had just gotten divorced. I had liked this girl forever that never liked me back. I wasn't particularly good at basketball, but I was an athlete and everything else. So I always tried really hard so that I could, try to convince people I was good at basketball too. And for whatever reason, that memory is like, to me, is like the marker of when life started getting tough. And Summer took me to that point. And while I was there on the playground, I was able to, in this meditation, kind of put myself in the shoes of myself and put my shoes in me as a kid in different points. Summer asked me when I was kind of in the shoes of me as a young kid. She asked me what was going through my mind and all of the different things. And I realized that it's when I had to start fighting. And she had me walk over, little me walk over to me now. And she was like, what would he wonder about? Little me asked me now, he said, are we still fighting? And what fighting meant for me at the time was fighting to help my little brother feel like we were going to be okay through my parents splitting up. It was fighting for myself, trying to figure out how to balance the fact that my parents hated each other and the fact that I felt like I had this like persona I needed to keep up at school, and I still had to try and be cool and had to try to do all this different stuff. And, trying to fight to be still good at everything that I was doing and like all this stuff. I just felt like everything was in such disarray, and I was like, oh fuck, it's on me to make sure everything's cool. I can't rely on just my family and my parents and this and that. Like I have to do that. I have to be solid for my mom when I'm there. I have to be solid for my dad when I'm there. I have to speak for my brother and I to tell them everything's okay. I have to make sure that he knows everything's fine, and like, then I have to take care of me too. And, little me asked big me if we were still fighting. Broke my heart, but I had to look at him and say yes. And in that moment, I just like, it was almost like I like watched little me just like drop his head, because I thought it would go away at some point. I thought that at some point there would be a time where I felt like I had done the thing, like I had gotten out of it, like I had won the fight, like I had gotten to a point where I was enough, where I was solid for everybody, where I was solid for my brother, where I was solid for myself, and where I just felt comfortable being like, everything's going to be okay. And I think that little me, I think it would have broken his heart to know that 15 years later, it didn't feel that way. But I also think that if little me were to ask me now whether or not it was worth it, I think that the answer is yes. I think that, it's allowed me to give advice to people who are in that same situation. It caused me to develop a sense of independence that has served me extremely well. Those situations helped me learn how to count on myself and how to work hard for things that I want. It's made me resilient. It's also helped me give perspective to other friends that I have that are parents when they're divorced or thinking about divorce or something like that. And it's helped me be able to tell them, like, it's helped me give them a perspective that might be helpful for them. And I've had some very beautiful conversations for that. And so that was a really tough moment, but I think that I would like to have dinner with me. I would like to have dinner with that kid. And in the moment, like I have so many moments now where I feel like I've lost touch with him. And I would love to ask him, like, man, what are our dreams? What What do you find beautiful in the world? What matters to you? What dreams do you have for us? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What are the kind of things that you want to do? And, when you're 26, what do you want to be able to say that you've done? And I'm curious in what ways I'm not giving myself enough credit for the things that maybe I've accomplished, or the things or the person that I've grown into, that kid would be proud of. And I also wonder what ways, what ways I would have let him down. And I think that his perspective in a lot of ways are probably maybe a lot better than the ones that I have now. And I would like to give him some encouragement for just continuing the fight, man, for keeping going. And I think that it would bring me a lot of peace. I think it'd bring me a lot of understanding and a lot of perspective to see in what ways my own bullshit has gotten into the ways of some of the things that matter. I'd like to maybe see in what ways I'm not giving myself enough credit, and maybe get back in touch with some of the dreams that kid had, and some of the perspective that he had, because I'm sure it was a good one. So I would do that. I would have a dinner with that kid. I've loved sushi my whole life, so we'd probably go get sushi, and yeah, be a good time. All right. Anyways, the next one, similar kind of like past reflective stuff. Rowan Olischuk asked me a question. Love the conversation I get to have with this dude. He's got a ton of potential. Don't fall in love with the word potential, but he's got a lot of it. He asked, what's one piece of advice you'd give to your 18-year-old self, and why? I've answered this question a handful of times. I don't remember how many of them have been on this podcast versus the old one that I used to do, but I think that I would tell myself to enjoy the chapter that I'm in while I'm in it. Back to me being a future-paced thinker on a lot of things. Growing up, I think I always wanted to be a little bit older than I was. I wanted to be a little bit further ahead than I was, and always was kind of looking to the next thing and not really appreciating the thing that I was in the moment. I missed a lot of stuff because of that. Like when I was in college, my friends were out having fun and doing their stuff and blah, blah, blah. I was in my dorm room learning how to day trade and starting a clothing company. And, I tried to start this financial education company and all this different stuff. I was just nerding out because I was like, no, I'm not trying to be a party boy. I'm not trying to be a club. You guys are idiots and blah, 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 blah. Not to say that I didn't do some of that stuff, but I said no to a lot of things, and I either said no to things or didn't enjoy things while I was in them because I kept on thinking about what's next and how can I get there faster and how can I get ahead. There's a lot of experiences that happen in certain phases of your life that you can't have again. There will probably never be a time where the only thing I have to worry about is showing up to lifting for football on time, going to practice, and making sure my homework is done. In the off season of football, all I had to do was get my homework done, make sure I wasn't broke, and feed myself and go to lifting at the same time. And the rest of it was gravy. I had nothing to stress about. I didn't lose sleep over clients. I didn't lose sleep over my team. Nothing. That'll never happen again. And I don't think that I fully enjoyed it for what it was in the moment. So I would say, man, for my 18-year-old self, I would tell him that dude, you're gonna get there regardless. Yes, there are things that you can do to get ahead, and there are things that you can do to sharpen the axe. And honestly, I probably would have gone crazy if I didn't do some of those things, but enjoy the stuff when you're in it, man. There's friends that you're gonna regret not spending more time with. There's things that you're gonna wish you said yes to. There's all of this stuff, but just try to enjoy whatever feels like the thing that needs to be enjoyed right now. Enjoy that. Because that thing that's calling to you, and the ways that you feel behind, and the ways that you think that you can get ahead, and the ways that, all of this stuff that you feel like you're missing, you're not missing shit, dude. I would have told that guy, there's a lot of things right now that are actually what you should be doing, and it's not what you think it is. It's you think you need to be researching and investing and doing all these different things. And to some degree, yes, some of that. But in all reality, by focusing on the next chapter instead of actually writing this one and enjoying it, you're actually missing a whole lot more by doing that than if you were to just like take your time, trust that all of those things are going to happen, and like live in this moment right now. And so I would encourage 18-year-old me to do that. Fucking enjoy it, man. Enjoy the ride. Probably advice I could use right now too. I'm sure 40-year-old me would tell me the same thing right now too. So anyways, another one from Jerome. He said, if $1 billion hit your account tomorrow, what would you do? I know we're pretty deep into this podcast, so I'll keep these quick, but honestly, dude, I would just have a chill little period. I think I'd probably cross a couple things off my list and just like, yeah, that's probably what I do. So I would invest in the podcast. I'd get like the highest quality cameras that we could. I'd probably build a new studio, hire a team that could do some cool stuff, and then travel a bit for it so that I could get different guests and all that kind of stuff. But I go hard on the podcast. I really love the in-person like coffee and DJ events that people are doing in different cities. Quite frankly, I got burnt out on the bar scene a long time ago, and I don't think that anybody's best version of themselves is like out getting fucked up and staying out too late and all that kind of stuff. So I love the fact that like these different cities are doing like coffee and DJs at 10 a.m. Where you can hang out and have a good time. So I would probably put on some of those events, and I would also love to own a local coffee shop. If I had $1 billion, it probably wouldn't need to be crazy profitable. And so I would just want to make it as like creatively inspiring as possible. I'd put a podcast studio in there that people could use. I'd put like music recording studio in there. I'd have all sorts of cool like records and local art and like great furniture and meeting spaces. And like, I would just want to make it the most inspiring place that somebody could hang out and like work or create or have a date or like any of those sorts of things. A lot of the work that I do lives on the internet, and like, yes, you can watch it, but you can't like feel it and hold it and like be in the space with it. And so, I think it'd be really cool to be able to walk through the doors of something that I created and see people like enjoying it in real time. So I think that's what I would do. And then I'd do some traveling too. I think that that's what I would do if it all hit my account tomorrow. And the good thing about $1 billion is it buys you the time to figure out what to do with the rest of it. So I would probably have an answer for you after a couple months or so. Last question from the Q&A is another one from Caden Venata, which I feel like is great to end off with. He said, next chapter of life, what's scary and what is exciting? I'm really excited for this getting good thing, man. I've done a fuck ton of work in the last, sorry for the profanity, everybody. My grandma listens to this, and I'm sure she's gonna get upset. I get a little bit passionate about these things sometimes. So grandma, I love you. I'm sorry. I have spent a ton of mental and financial and physical resources in the last year figuring out what good looks like for me. And I feel like through all of the testing and learning and all of the stuff that's come up, I feel like I've found whatever my answer exists as for right now. And what I'm really excited about is that I have some of those answers, not all of the answers, and that I can start to scale the things that I'm excited about. I'm really excited that we found an offer in the business that provides real value to companies, that we can scale really well, that we can do great work as a team, that I can pay my people really well. Like, I'm so excited about that. So I'm excited to grow into that. Same thing on my personal life. I feel like I really dialed in like workout schedules, and my friends are the best that I've ever had. And like, I've just got so many great things in my life right now. And so, I'm excited for this next chapter 3, getting good. Because it's one of the first times that I feel like I've had answers for what I should be working so hard on. And I'm excited to see how some of those things start to turn out. So I'm stoked on that. Some of the things that are scary are some of the unknowns. I think that with any time that you grow, you start walking down a road where you don't know where the monsters are. And so maybe a little bit of that. Quite frankly, man, I don't feel like I'm real scared of a whole lot right now, which freaking universe, I'm not taking that as a challenge. So chill. But that being said, I'm in a pretty good state of excitement right now. Anything short of like people that I'm close to passing, but I'm always kind of scared of that. I think we're good, man. I'm really excited for this next chapter and to see where it takes me. So Yeah, that's that. Okay. Well, with that, guys, this is the end of the show. I know that this one's been a bit longer, knocking on the door 2 hours. So if you've listened this long, thank you so much for being here. These episodes, like I said at the beginning, are super rewarding for me. I love having a chance to be able to be out and about in the world and know that I can gather some things to bring to all of you here and there on these solo episodes. And it's really cool to hear some of the things that you guys are thinking about. Again, never have a more exciting moment than when you guys listen to one of these podcasts and bring ideas or reflections or anything like that from them. So if you see me in person and there's something in this episode that you enjoyed or that sparked a thought or anything like that, or even if you just want to shoot me a message, please do so. I'm typically more responsive on my personal Instagram, which is just at Drew Korf. Yeah, this podcast means a whole lot to me. It's one of the things that I feel like, well, to be quite honest, it's the thing that I feel like I bring the most value to the world with. Whether, that's the case for everybody that listens to it, probably not, but it's truly where I feel like I do my best work and my most like soul-led work. And it feels real freaking good to be back. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy some of the ones that are coming up. We've got great musicians and business owners and ex-musicians who are now business owners and photographers and all sorts of cool stuff coming up here. It's actually going to be a busy couple weeks recording. So really excited to have some of the conversations that we're about to have coming up. Yeah, just appreciate the heck out of this community and everybody who's taken the time to watch a full episode, watch a clip, say something nice. Whatever that level of involvement has been, that's really the fuel that keeps me going and keeps the rest of this thing going. So with that being said, this has been a whole lot of fun. Thank you guys for listening. I know that we probably threw it somewhere in this episode, but if you want to continue to support the show, the biggest thing that you could do is subscribe or follow on whatever platform that you're on. The algorithms love that for some reason, and we'll actually push our show to more people. And the same is true for ratings. So if you've got 20 seconds in your day to go do one of those things, that would be super, super helpful. Hopefully it allows us to keep getting more bigger guests and impactful stories for you guys to listen to. So with that being said, this is awesome. You guys are awesome. So good to be back. And we'll see you in the next one. Be where your feet are. I love you.